Ambassador Kethral's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. The holographic display showed a blue-green planet orbiting a young yellow star, its surface teeming with what the Council's xenobiologists had classified as a primitive bipedal species. The humans, as they called themselves, had barely achieved basic spaceflight and were still confined to their home system. "Perfect specimens for the labor colonies," muttered General Vorthak, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking as he shifted in his command chair. The Zephyrian military commander had overseen 17 successful planetary acquisitions for the Council, each one adding millions of new workers to fuel their ever-expanding galactic empire. The Universal Council had stood unchallenged for 3,000 years, a confederation of 47 advanced species that had long ago perfected the art of subjugation. Their method was simple and effective: identify developing worlds, evaluate their inhabitants for useful traits, then deploy overwhelming technological superiority to establish control. The conquered populations were sorted into categories. The intelligent ones became administrators and technicians, the strong ones became laborers, and the rest were relocated to agricultural worlds to sustain the Council's food production. Earth had drawn their attention 6 months ago when their deep space monitoring stations detected the humans' first attempts at faster-than-light communication. The signals were crude and inefficient, but they indicated a species on the verge of interstellar capability. Standard Council protocol demanded immediate intervention before such civilizations could develop defensive technologies or form alliances with other emerging species. The preliminary scans show approximately 8 billion individuals, reported Science Director Com, her translucent blue form shimmering as data streams flowed through her crystalline nervous system. Physical capabilities appear average for carbon-based life forms. Brain structure suggests moderate intelligence, though their technology level indicates inefficient development patterns. Admiral Nethes, Supreme Commander of the Council's First Fleet, studied the tactical displays with the cold calculation that had made her famous across the galaxy. Her serpentine body coiled around the central command platform as she processed the information. The humans had developed nuclear weapons, but possessed no energy shields. They had crude spacecraft, but no gravity manipulation. They had basic computers, but no quantum processing capabilities. "Recommended force deployment?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Standard subjugation protocol should suffice," General Vorthak replied. 3 carrier groups, orbital bombardment platforms, and atmosphere processors. We can have their major population centers under control within 72 hours. The other council members present nodded their agreement. It was always the same: a brief show of overwhelming force, the destruction of key military installations, and then negotiations with whatever governments remained standing. The humans would be offered the same choice given to every species before them: surrender and accept integration into the Council's hierarchy, or face total annihilation. None had ever chosen the second option. "There is one anomaly in the data," Science Director Com interjected, her form flickering with uncertainty. "The humans show unusually high diversity in their genetic markers and cultural expressions. They also display significant variance in their response to stress situations. Some populations flee from conflict, while others appear to actively seek it out." Ambassador Kethral dismissed this with a wave of her primary manipulator. "Irrelevant. All primitive species show behavioral inconsistencies. Once we establish proper conditioning protocols, they'll adapt to their assigned roles like all the others." Admiral Nethes began issuing deployment orders to her fleet commanders. The massive dreadnoughts would move first, establishing orbital supremacy and demonstrating the futility of resistance. The carrier groups would follow, deploying atmospheric control vessels and communication jammers. Within days, human civilization would be reduced to scattered remnants awaiting council redistribution. As the holographic display shifted to show fleet movements, none of the assembled council members noticed the subtle anomalies in the human communication intercepts. The strange patterns hidden within their entertainment broadcasts, the unusual energy signatures from their remote research facilities, or the peculiar way their governments had suddenly stopped all public discussions about space exploration. The Council had perfected the conquest of civilizations that followed predictable patterns of development. They had subjugated species that built upward from their home worlds, that centralized their governments, that developed technologies in logical progression from simple to complex. But they had never encountered a species that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of hunting creatures far larger and more dangerous than themselves. They had never faced beings whose greatest cultural achievements celebrated not the builders and the peacekeepers, but the warriors and the survivors. The Universal Council was about to learn why apex predators made poor prey. The first signs that something was wrong came when Admiral Nethi's advanced scout ships failed to report back from the Sol system. 3 sleek reconnaissance vessels had been dispatched to conduct final surveillance before the main fleet's arrival, but their quantum communication arrays had gone silent just hours after entering human space. Sensor malfunction, General Vorthax suggested, though his mandibles clicked nervously. Their technology is primitive, perhaps some form of natural interference. Admiral Nethes wasn't convinced. In 3 decades of military service, she had never lost contact with scout ships during a routine observation mission. She ordered 2 additional vessels to investigate, equipped with backup communication systems and emergency beacons. They vanished as well. Meanwhile, on Earth, Colonel Sarah Chun stood in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching displays that would have seemed impossible to the Council's intelligence analysts. The screens showed real-time tracking of alien vessels, their positions marked with precision that defied the supposedly primitive human sensor technology. Target Package 7 just went dark, reported Lieutenant Williams from his tactical station. That's all 5 scouts eliminated. The main fleet should arrive in approximately 16 hours. Chen nodded grimly. Humanity had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone realized. The secret began nearly 70 years ago when radio astronomers detected the first Council communications, patterns hidden within what appeared to be natural cosmic radiation. Patient analysis had revealed the existence of a vast galactic empire that systematically conquered developing worlds. The realization that Earth would eventually become a target had sparked the greatest cooperative effort in human history. Public space programs were deliberately kept primitive while black projects pushed the boundaries of physics in underground laboratories. Governments maintained the illusion of international rivalry while secretly coordinating defensive preparations. Humanity had one crucial advantage the Council couldn't comprehend. They were a species that had evolved not as builders or farmers, but as hunters. Every human carried the genetic legacy of ancestors who had survived by outthinking predators larger and stronger than themselves. They understood patience, deception, and the value of appearing weak while growing strong. Status report on the orbital platforms? Chen asked. All defensive satellites are in position and powered down, replied Major Torres. 50,000 units in high orbit, appearing as space debris on passive scans. Weapon systems are charged and ready for remote activation. The space debris was humanity's masterpiece of deception. Over 20 years, they had filled Earth's orbital space with what appeared to be discarded rocket stages, failed satellites, and construction refuse. In reality, each piece of junk contained sophisticated weapons systems powered by revolutionary fusion cells. The alien scans would show exactly what they expected to see, the orbital clutter of a species that had barely mastered spaceflight. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered the command center carrying a tablet loaded with intelligence data. As Earth's leading expert on xenobiology, she had spent years analyzing captured Council communications to understand their psychology and tactics. The intercepted fleet communications confirm our behavioral models, she reported. They're following standard subjugation protocol. Overwhelming force, minimal casualties on their side, then negotiated surrender. They've done this same operation dozens of times. And it's worked every time, Chen observed. Until now. The key to human strategy lay in understanding what the Council didn't know about Earth's inhabitants. They saw a species confined to one world, with governments that appeared to compete rather than cooperate. They couldn't detect the hidden installations because they were buried deep underground or disguised as natural formations. Most importantly, they didn't understand that humans had already spread throughout their solar system. The Mars colonies weren't the small research stations they appear to be, but fortified military bases. The asteroid mining operations weren't just resource extraction, but weapons manufacturing facilities. The failed missions to Jupiter's moons had actually established hidden shipyards in the outer system. Phase 1 is complete, reported Commander Harrison from the Space Operations Center. All civilian populations are in hardened shelters. Critical infrastructure has been moved underground. Surface installations have been prepared for controlled demolition. This was the part that would confuse the Council most. No species in their experience had ever willingly destroyed their own cities and infrastructure, but humans understood that buildings could be rebuilt while dead defenders couldn't. The surface of Earth would be sacrificed if necessary, while the real battle was fought from hidden positions. Chin pulled up the tactical display, showing Council fleet movements. 47 massive dreadnoughts were approaching the outer system, accompanied by twice as many support vessels. By any conventional measure, it was enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface multiple times over. "They think they're hunting sheep," she said quietly. "They have no idea they're walking into a wolf pack." The final pieces of the deception were already in motion. Human communication networks have been flooded with panicked civilian chatter and desperate government messages, all carefully scripted to reinforce the appearance of an unprepared world facing inevitable conquest. The aliens would intercept these signals and assume they were seeing the collapse of human resistance before the battle even began. But beneath the surface panic, a different kind of communication flowed through quantum-encrypted channels. Military units that didn't officially exist confirmed their readiness. Weapons systems that no human government had publicly developed powered up from their hidden positions. Ships that weren't supposed to exist prepared to launch from concealed bases. Humanity's greatest hunters were about to teach the galaxy's most successful predators what it meant to become prey. Admiral Nethys felt the first tremor of unease as her fleet approached Earth's outer system. The tactical displays showed what appeared to be a completely defenseless world. No orbital defense platforms, no patrol vessels, no energy signatures indicating advanced military technology. It was exactly what she expected to see, yet something felt wrong. "Admiral, we're detecting massive communication traffic from the surface," reported her intelligence officer, a nervous Altarian whose gill slits fluttered with anxiety. The humans appear to be in complete disarray. Multiple governments are issuing contradictory evacuation orders. Their military units are reporting to different command structures. This should have been reassuring news. A divided enemy was a defeated enemy, as every military academy in the Council taught. But Nethys couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something crucial. In her experience, species facing inevitable conquest either unified in desperate resistance or surrendered immediately to minimize casualties. She had never seen this type of chaotic fragmentation. "Begin standard approach pattern," she commanded. "Deploy sensor drones throughout the system. I want detailed scans of every asteroid and debris field." The sensor drones spread out across the solar system, their sophisticated instruments probing for hidden installations or defensive positions. They found exactly what the humans wanted them to find: a few small research stations on Mars, some automated mining equipment in the asteroid belt, and what appeared to be a failed colony attempt on Europa. Everything looked exactly as primitive as expected. On Earth's surface, the deception was playing out perfectly. Major cities appeared to be in chaos as population streamed toward evacuation centers. Government broadcasts spoke of negotiated surrender and cooperation with the incoming forces. Military bases showed signs of hasty abandonment, with vehicles and equipment left scattered as if their crews had fled in panic. The reality was very different. Beneath the apparent chaos, the most complex military operation in human history was unfolding with clockwork precision. Every fleeing civilian was actually moving toward hardened underground shelters that could withstand orbital bombardment. Every abandoned military base had been stripped of useful equipment and rigged with sophisticated sensors to track alien movements. Colonel Chun watched the Council fleet's approach from her command bunker, noting how perfectly they followed their established patterns. The massive dreadnoughts moved in standard formation, confident in their overwhelming technological advantage. Their escort vessels maintained predictable spacing and defensive configurations. They're not even running active defense protocols, observed Commander Harrison with a mixture of admiration and contempt. They're so certain of victory that they're treating this like a training exercise. That's what 47 successful conquests will do to you, Chen replied. They've forgotten that there's a difference between hunting sheep and hunting wolves. The first phase of the human counterattack began in the asteroid belt, where Council sensors had detected only routine mining operations. What they couldn't see were the massive railgun batteries hidden within hollowed-out asteroids, their barrels camouflaged to look like ordinary rock formations. These weapons had been under construction for 15 years, powered by fusion reactors that generated no detectable signatures when dormant. Asteroid Defense Network reports ready status, came the report from the Outer System Command Center. All 47 primary batteries are locked onto capital ship targets. Secondary batteries have acquired escort vessels. The humans had studied every piece of Council technology they could analyze from intercepted communications. They knew the aliens' energy shields were incredibly effective against directed energy weapons, but had never been tested against kinetic projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The asteroids' guns fired solid tungsten rounds accelerated by magnetic fields that could punch through a moon. Admiral Nethes was reviewing casualty projections for the upcoming surface bombardment when her tactical officer suddenly stiffened in alarm. Admiral, multiple high-energy signatures throughout the asteroid belt. Unknown weapons systems powering up across a wide front. Before she could respond, space around the Council fleet lit up with streaks of accelerated metal traveling too fast for the eye to follow. The first salvo struck 3 dreadnoughts simultaneously, their shields flaring and failing as tungsten rods designed to penetrate planetary crusts tore through alien armor like paper. Evasive maneuvers, Nethes commanded, but her ships were massive and slow to turn. The second salvo arrived 8 seconds later, claiming 2 more capital ships and crippling a carrier group. How was this possible? General Vorthak demanded from the fleet command channel. Our intelligence showed no orbital defenses. The answer came in the form of a third salvo that seemed to originate from empty space itself. Human stealth technology, developed through decades of necessity, had created vessels that were virtually invisible to Council sensors. Hundreds of small attack craft that had been hiding among the asteroids suddenly revealed themselves, launching swarms of missiles at the alien escort vessels. But the real surprise was yet to come. The Council's tactical computers, overwhelmed by the sudden appearance of threats throughout the system, failed to notice the gravitational anomalies developing near Jupiter. What appeared to be routine gas harvesting operations suddenly revealed themselves as massive shipyards that had been operating in secret for over a decade. 12 human dreadnoughts emerged from Jupiter's atmosphere, their hulls gleaming with armor that incorporated every lesson learned from studying Council technology. These ships were larger than anything in the alien fleet, powered by fusion reactors that had been deemed impossible by Council science. Surface control to Admiral Nethes came a calm human voice on the fleet's command frequency. This is Colonel Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered our territory with hostile intent. You have 30 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal, or we will demonstrate why apex predators make poor prey. Admiral Nethes stared at her tactical displays in growing horror. Her fleet was surrounded by enemies that shouldn't have existed, attacked by weapons that shouldn't have been possible, facing ships that dwarfed her own vessels. In the span of 5 minutes, humanity had revealed that everything the Council thought they knew about this species was wrong. The hunters had become the hunted, and the trap was about to close completely. Admiral Nethes had less than 30 seconds to make the most important decision of her career. Her fleet was trapped in a carefully prepared killing field, surrounded by enemies that had somehow remained invisible until the moment they chose to reveal themselves. The tactical situation was impossible. No species in Council history had ever demonstrated this level of strategic deception. Admiral, we're receiving surrender demands from multiple human vessels, her communications officer reported, his voice cracking with disbelief. They're requesting our immediate withdrawal from the system. Surrender? General Vorthack's voice crackled over the fleet channel, filled with rage and confusion. They're demanding that we surrender? I count barely 100 human vessels against our entire battle fleet. Nethes checked her displays again, hoping the numbers would somehow make more sense. The human ships were indeed outnumbered, but they had positioned themselves with devastating tactical advantage. The asteroid belt guns could fire continuously from concealed positions. The stealth fighters were too small and fast for her heavy weapons to track effectively, and those massive dreadnoughts emerging from Jupiter were larger than anything in the Council archives. More concerning was what she couldn't see. If the humans had hidden this much military capability, what other surprises were waiting? Her strategic training warned against fighting an enemy whose full strength remained unknown. Admiral, her sensor chief interrupted urgently. We're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the inner system. Whatever they're planning next, it's going to be significant. The energy buildups were humanity's orbital defense grid coming online. 50,000 hidden platforms began revealing themselves as their camouflage systems shut down. What had appeared to be space debris suddenly bristled with weapon arrays, their targeting systems locking onto every Council vessel simultaneously. Colonel Chun watched the alien fleet's hesitation with grim satisfaction. The humans had learned from studying every Council conquest. The aliens relied on intimidation and overwhelming initial strikes to force quick surrenders. But when faced with unexpected resistance, their commanders became cautious and defensive. Phase 3 is authorized, she announced to her scattered command centers. Show them what we've really been building out there. The next revelation came from the direction of Mars. What the Council's sensors had identified as small research colonies suddenly revealed themselves as the forward bases for humanity's most ambitious project. Massive construction platforms that had been disguised as natural terrain began deploying structures that dwarfed even the Jovian shipyards. By the void, whispered Science Director Com as the tactical displays updated with new contacts. Those aren't research stations. They're fortress worlds. They've militarized their entire system. Admiral Nethes realized that her fleet wasn't just outmaneuvered. They were completely outclassed. The humans hadn't just prepared defenses. They had transformed their solar system into a massive weapons platform. Every moon, asteroid, and planetary body had been turned into a potential threat. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Human Command Authority, her communications officer announced. Put it through, Nethes replied, dreading what she was about to hear. Colonel Chen's image appeared on the fleet's command screens, her expression calm and professional. Behind her, tactical displays showed the positions of human forces throughout the system, a demonstration of capability that left no doubt about the alien situation. Admiral Nethes, Chen began, my name is Colonel Sarah Chun, commander of the Seoul Defense Grid. Your fleet is currently surrounded by defensive positions that have been under construction for 70 years. You have two choices: immediate unconditional withdrawal or total destruction. You cannot be serious, General Vorthack interrupted. We represent the Universal Council. 47 species bow to our authority. Chen's expression didn't change. General Vorthack, I presume. Your council has conquered 47 species because they weren't prepared for your arrival. We've had 7 decades to study your methods and develop countermeasures. Every ship in your fleet is currently targeted by multiple weapon systems. Every escape route has been blocked. Your surrender is not requested. Your withdrawal is demanded. Admiral Nethes felt the weight of command settling heavily on her shoulders. In all her years of military service, no enemy had ever spoken to Council forces with such casual confidence. The humans weren't bluffing or desperate. They were stating facts. "What are your terms?" she asked, ignoring General Vorthak's outraged protests. "Complete withdrawal from this system within 6 hours," Chen replied. "No return voyages, no surveillance missions, no further contact attempts. In exchange, your fleet will be allowed to leave intact with all personnel. And if we refuse—" Chen gestured to her tactical displays, where red targeting indicators showed every Council vessel locked in the crosshairs of the human defense grid. "Then, we demonstrate why evolution selected us as apex predators. Your choice, Admiral." The silence on the Council command channel stretched for long seconds. Every senior officer in the fleet understood the implications. They could fight and likely inflict significant casualties on the humans, but their own destruction was certain. The tactical advantage was too overwhelming to overcome. "Admiral," her intelligence officer whispered urgently, "long-range sensors are detecting additional human vessels approaching from outside the system. Large formations, moving at impossible speeds." Nethys closed her eyes. The humans had more fleets, more weapons, more surprises waiting. This wasn't just a defensive operation, it was a demonstration. They were showing the Council exactly what humanity was capable of when properly motivated. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Universal Council fleet was about to retreat from a primitive world. But as Admiral Nethys began issuing withdrawal orders, she realized that humanity was no longer primitive at all. They had evolved into something the Council had never encountered before, a species of hunters who had successfully pretended to be prey until the moment they chose to reveal their true nature. The trap had been sprung perfectly, and the Council was about to learn that some species were simply too dangerous to conquer. The Council chambers on Nexus Prime fell into unprecedented silence as Admiral Nethys finished her report. 3,000 years of unbroken conquest had ended not with glorious victory, but with humiliating retreat from a world they had dismissed as primitive. The assembled representatives of 47 species struggled to comprehend how their most successful military operation had become their greatest defeat. "You're telling us," said Prime Counselor Zephix, his crystalline form resonating with barely contained fury, "that a single species with no interstellar presence somehow constructed a defensive network that neutralized our entire First Fleet." "Not neutralized," Admiral Nethys corrected grimly. "Outclassed. Every tactical assumption we made about humanity was wrong. They've been preparing for our arrival for decades, possibly centuries. Their technology exceeds our own in several critical areas." General Vorthak's exoskeleton clicked in agitation. "Impossible. Our intelligence networks would have detected advanced development. We monitored their communications, analyzed their technology demonstrations, observed their social structures. They showed all the standard patterns of a pre-contact civilization." Science Director Com's form flickered as she processed the tactical data from the retreat. "The evidence suggests they deliberately maintained the appearance of primitive development while secretly advancing their capabilities. This level of coordinated deception across an entire species is unprecedented in Council records." The implications of humanity's deception were staggering. If one species could successfully hide their true capabilities, how many others might be doing the same? The Council's entire expansion strategy was based on identifying vulnerable targets before they could develop adequate defenses. If that intelligence system was flawed, their empire was built on false foundations. "What are your recommendations?" Prime Counselor Zephix asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Admiral Nethys activated a holographic display showing the human fleet formations that had emerged during the battle. Immediate reclassification of humanity as a Class Alpha threat. Reinforcement of all border systems within 50 light-years of their territory. And, most importantly, no further contact attempts until we understand the full extent of their capabilities. The recommendation sent shockwaves through the assembled council. A Class Alpha classification was reserved for species capable of threatening the Council itself. No primitive world had ever received such a designation. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, humanity was dealing with the aftermath of their successful defense. The orbital platforms remained active, but the immediate threat had passed. Colonel Chun stood before a gathering of Earth's military and political leaders, her expression weary but satisfied. "The Council fleet has withdrawn beyond our sensor range," she reported. "Long-range monitoring shows they've established a defensive perimeter approximately 60 light-years from our system. They're clearly treating us as a serious threat now." President Martinez leaned forward in his chair. "What's our assessment of their likely response? Will they attempt another invasion?" Dr. Vasquez consulted her analysis of Council psychology and tactics. "Unlikely in the short term. Our demonstration exceeded their worst-case projections for human capabilities. They'll spend considerable time reassessing their intelligence methods and developing new tactical approaches. We bought ourselves breathing room. But humanity wasn't planning to use that breathing room for rest. The successful defense of Earth was only the beginning of a much larger strategy. Hidden throughout human space, massive construction projects were already underway. The weapons and ships that had shocked the Council were just the first generation of humanity's military technology. "Status report on the expansion projects?" Chen asked. Commander Harrison activated a secure holographic display showing star charts extending far beyond the Sol system. Phase 1 colonial fleets reached their target systems 3 months ago. Fortified bases are under construction at 17 strategic locations. The Council believes we're confined to one system, but we've actually been expanding for over a decade. This was humanity's masterstroke. While maintaining the appearance of a single-world species, they had secretly established hidden colonies throughout nearby space. These weren't just settlements. They were forward military bases designed to project human power across a vast region. "The Kepler 442 shipyards are ahead of schedule," Harrison continued. "The new Dreadnought class should be ready for deployment within 2 years. The Proxima Centauri weapons testing facility has successfully demonstrated the quantum disruption arrays. The quantum disruption technology represented humanity's answer to Council energy shields. By manipulating quantum fields at the subatomic level, human scientists had developed weapons that could bypass conventional defensive systems entirely. It was technology that the Council's physicists had declared theoretically impossible." Colonel Chun smiled grimly as she reviewed the strategic projections. The Council assumed they were dealing with an isolated defensive victory. They had no idea that humanity was already planning their next moves on a galactic scale. 6 months later, Council intelligence networks began detecting disturbing reports from the galactic rim. Several Council tributary species were reporting contact with unknown vessels bearing human insignia. These ships didn't match any known Earth designs, suggesting that humanity's capabilities were still expanding. More troubling were the messages these human vessels left behind. Not threats or demands, but simple statements of fact. Humanity was aware of the Council's conquest methods. They knew which species had been subjugated and which were scheduled for future integration, and they were offering alternatives. Admiral Nethes studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. The humans weren't just defending their territory, they were actively undermining Council authority. Species that had been conquered decades ago were beginning to question whether their subjugation was truly permanent. Others were requesting human assistance in developing their own defensive capabilities. "They're not just a military threat," she reported to the Emergency Council session. "They're an ideological one. They're teaching other species that the Council can be resisted." The Universal Council had built their empire on the assumption that conquest was inevitable and resistance was futile. But humanity had proven that careful preparation, strategic deception, and advanced technology could overcome even overwhelming odds. That lesson was spreading throughout the galaxy like wildfire. As the first year after the Sol Defense battle ended, the balance of power in the galaxy had fundamentally shifted. The Council remained the largest single authority, but They were no longer the unchallenged rulers of known space. Humanity had revealed that apex predators, when properly motivated, could become the hunters instead of the hunted. The Universal Council had spent 3 millennia assuming they could dominate any species they encountered. They never realized they were dealing with a race of ultimate hunters who had simply been waiting for the right moment to reveal their true nature. Now the galaxy would never be the same.